The mechanic fixes vintage cars for free sometimes, not knowing the owner is a famous racer seeking a new crew chief. That's what Jack Reynolds did every third Saturday of the month. Selected one vehicle from the many desperate souls who couldn't afford proper repairs and fixed it, no questions asked, no payment expected. It was his way of patching the hole in his heart that his father's death had left behind. The Automare carried a bite this morning as Jack pulled up the rusted garage door of Reynolds Auto, the family business that now rested solely on his calloused hands. 58 years the shop had stood on this corner of Millbrook, outlasting 3 recessions and the big chain repair shops that had sprung up on the highway. His father had passed 8 months ago, but Jack still found himself turning to share observations with a ghost. The metallic clatter of the rising door echoed through the empty garage. Saturday mornings were normally his sanctuary. No appointments, no phones ringing, just Jack and the tools his father had collected over a lifetime. But today was different. Today was his giving back day, a tradition he'd started after the funeral when the grief had threatened to drown him. He glanced at the small stack of applications on his workbench, handwritten notes from people in desperate situations, each hoping their car would be the one chosen for free repairs this month. The selection process was always difficult, but Jack had developed a system. He didn't look for the saddest story. He looked for the one where his help might create the biggest ripple. A sharp gust of wind scattered a few leaves into the garage as a taxi pulled up outside. Jack checked his watch. 7:32 a.m., nearly 30 minutes before his self-imposed workday was set to begin. The cab's rear door opened, and a tall man in his mid-40s stepped out, his movements precise but stiff, as though nursing an old injury. He wore faded jeans, a simple gray Henley, and an expression that Jack recognized immediately, the look of someone carrying a burden invisible to others. The man paid the driver and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, staring at the weathered Reynolds Auto sign with an unreadable expression. In one hand, he clutched a manila folder, in the other, a set of keys that glinted in the early morning light. Jack wiped his hands on a rag and stepped forward. "Can I help you? We're not officially open yet, but I'm looking for Jack Reynolds," the man said, his voice carrying a slight rasp, the kind that comes from years of shouting over engine noise. "You found him." The man extended his hand. "Michael Lawson." Jack accepted the handshake, noting the strength in the grip and the calluses that matched his own. The name tugged at something in his memory, but he couldn't place it. "I know it's early," Michael said, "but I have a bit of a situation. I was told you might be the only person who could help." Jack's eyebrow raised. "Who told you that?" "Carl Winters. Said you were the best damn mechanic he'd ever met." Carl had been Jack's father's best friend and a regular at the shop until a stroke had forced him to give up driving 3 years ago. Any friend of Carl's was welcome. "What seems to be the problem?" Jack asked, already reaching for the door to invite the stranger in. Michael hesitated, his eyes darting to the row of cars parked behind the shop. "It's not exactly a simple problem. It's a 1967 Shelby GT 500. Jack froze. The Shelby was automotive royalty, a legendary muscle car that had dominated tracks and captured imaginations for generations. Few mechanics ever got the chance to work on one. "You have a Shelby?" Jack tried to keep the reverence from his voice. "Had," Michael corrected, a shadow crossing his face. "It was my father's. Been sitting in a garage for 12 years. I tried starting it last week and..." He trailed off, the sentence hanging incomplete in the cool morning air. And it caught fire." Michael's voice cracked slightly. "Nothing major, just some smoke from under the hood. But I killed it immediately. Haven't touched it since." Jack nodded, understanding the caution. A vintage Shelby wasn't just a car, it was history, heritage. "And you brought it here." "It's on a flatbed about 20 minutes out. I wanted to talk to you first, make sure you were willing to take on something like this." "I know it's a lot to ask." Jack should have hesitated. The shop was barely staying afloat after his father's medical bills. A Shelby restoration could take weeks, and this man, whoever he was, could probably afford the specialized shops in the city. But something in Michael's expression, the mixture of hope and resignation, reminded him so much of his father that Jack found himself nodding. "Let's see what we're working with," he said, gesturing toward his office. "It's coffee?" Michael's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Black if you have it." As Jack busied himself with the ancient coffee maker, Michael wandered around the small office, studying the faded photographs on the wall. Jack's father standing proudly beside various cars, certificates of achievement, and a small collection of trophies from local racing events. "Your father was a racer?" Michael asked, pointing to a photo of an older man grinning widely next to a modified stock car. Jack handed him a chipped mug of coffee. Weekend warrior. Nothing serious. Said racing was in his blood, but making sure other people could drive safely was in his soul. Michael nodded, sipping the coffee without commenting on its bitterness. Good philosophy. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two men connected by nothing more than a mutual respect for machines and the people who understood them. So, Jack finally said, "Tell me about this Shelby." Michael set down his coffee and opened the manila folder he'd been carrying. Inside were the original purchase documents, maintenance records, and several photographs of a midnight blue Shelby GT 500 that made Jack's breath catch. The car was immaculate in the photos, a perfect specimen of American muscle. "My father bought it new in '67, Michael explained. Drove it until 2011 when his health started failing. It's been garaged since then, climate-controlled, covered, battery disconnected. Everything by the book." Jack flipped through the meticulous maintenance records. "Your father took exceptional care of her. It was his pride and joy." Michael said softly, "When I was a kid, he'd take me for drives on Sunday mornings. Said there was nothing like the roar of that engine to make you feel alive." Jack glanced up, seeing the same reverence in Michael's eyes that his own father had shown for special cars. "And now it's yours." "Now it's mine," Michael agreed, "and I've already nearly destroyed it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Jack said, switching to the professional tone he used to reassure anxious customers. "Engine fires can look worse than they are. Could be something as simple as old fuel lines or a cracked vacuum hose." Michael's phone buzzed. He checked it quickly. "The flatbed's 10 minutes out." Jack nodded, already mentally preparing his workspace. "I'll clear a bay for it." As they walked back into the garage, Jack couldn't help but feel a familiar excitement building. This wasn't just any car. This was automotive history, a machine built for speed and beauty in equal measure. And something about Michael's connection to it resonated with him. They were both sons carrying their father's legacies, trying not to drop the weight. The flatbed arrived precisely on time, backing into the garage entrance with practiced ease. The driver, a weathered man named Hank, greeted Jack with a nod before beginning the careful process of unloading the Shelby. As the car descended the ramp, Jack felt his heart skip. Even covered in a thin layer of dust and clearly troubled, the Shelby commanded attention. Its long, aggressive lines and distinctive racing stripes spoke of a time when American muscle ruled the roads and tracks. This wasn't just transportation, it was art in motion. Or it had been, before whatever had caused the smoke. "Where exactly did you see the smoke coming from?" Jack asked as the car was positioned in the center bay. Michael pointed to the front right side of the engine compartment. "Around here." It was white at first, then got darker. Jack popped the hood, propping it open with practiced movements. The 428 cubic inch V8 engine sat like a sleeping giant, its chrome valve covers gleaming even under years of dust. He leaned in, inspecting without touching, getting a feel for what he was working with. "When's the last time the fuel system was serviced?" Jack asked, his eyes tracing the path of the fuel lines. "Not since my father parked it. I should have had it looked at before trying to start it. But..." Michael trailed off, the guilt evident in his voice. "But it's hard to let strangers touch something that important." Jack finished for him. "I understand." Their eyes met in mutual recognition. The understanding that sometimes the things we inherit carry more than just material value. Jack turned back to the engine. "I'm going to need to run some tests, check the fuel system, the electrical, basically give her a full diagnostic." "That okay with you?" Michael nodded. "Whatever she needs. I just want to hear her run again." There was something in his voice, a longing that went beyond mere appreciation for a classic car. This was about connection, about preserving something precious. Jack recognized that feeling all too well. "It'll take time," Jack warned, "and parts for these aren't always easy to come by." "Time I've got," Michael said, "and money's not an issue for the parts. I just need someone who'll treat her right." Jack nodded, already rolling up his sleeves. "Let me get started with the inspection. Might take a couple of hours. You're welcome to wait, or I can call you when I have a better idea of what we're dealing with." "I'll wait if that's all right," Michael said, settling onto a worn chair in the corner of the garage. "Been waiting 12 years already. What's a few more hours?" As Jack began his methodical inspection of the Shelby, Michael remained quiet, watching with attentive eyes. There was something oddly comforting about working under that watchful gaze. Not the nervous hovering of most customers, but the respectful observation of someone who understood the process. The morning stretched into afternoon as Jack carefully examined every inch of the engine compartment, taking photographs and making notes. The fuel lines had indeed deteriorated, a common issue with vintage cars left sitting for years. The carburetor would need rebuilding, and several electrical connections showed signs of corrosion. But the engine itself, the heart of the beast, appeared sound. "Well?" Michael asked when Jack finally straightened, his back protesting the hours bent over the engine bay. "Good news and bad news," Jack said, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "The good news is that the engine itself looks solid. Compression test shows all cylinders are healthy. The bad news is that almost everything that delivers fuel and spark to that engine needs attention." Michael nodded, unsurprised. "What's the timeline look like?" Jack considered, mentally calculating parts availability and labor hours. 2 weeks minimum. Could be longer depending on parts. "And the cost?" Michael asked, his expression carefully neutral. This was always the difficult part. The moment when passion collided with practicality. Jack ran through the numbers in his head, considering the specialized parts, the hours of labor, the testing and tuning. For a car like this, with the work it needs, Jack hesitated. "We're looking at somewhere between 7 and 10,000, depending on what else we find once we get deeper into it." He expected hesitation, perhaps shock at the figure. Instead, Michael simply nodded. "That's fair. When can you start?" "I can order parts today," Jack said. "But I should tell you, there are specialty shops that focus exclusively on classics like this." "They might—" "I'm not interested in other shops," Michael interrupted gently. "Carl said you were the best, and I can see he wasn't exaggerating. The way you look at her, you understand what she means." Jack felt an unexpected warmth at the compliment. "I'll take good care of her." "I know you will." Michael pulled out his wallet, extracting a business card. "My contact information. Call me anytime, day or night, if you need decisions made or have questions." Jack accepted the card, glancing at it briefly before tucking it into his pocket. "Will do, Mr. Lawson." "Michael, please." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know." Jack raised an eyebrow, waiting. "This isn't just about getting the car running again," Michael said, his voice dropping slightly. "I'm planning to take her to Willow Springs next month. There's a vintage exhibition race. Nothing serious, just a chance for these old beauties to stretch their legs on a proper track." Jack's eyes widened slightly. Racing a 50-year-old car worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars wasn't a decision made lightly. "You've raced before?" A small smile tugged at Michael's lips. "A time or two." Something about that smile triggered Jack's memory. He studied Michael's face more carefully. The confident posture, the calm assessment, the way he spoke about racing as casually as most people discuss the weather. "Wait," Jack said slowly. "Michael Lawson. Not the Michael Lawson who took 3 consecutive championships in the GT series?" The smile grew, though it didn't quite reach Michael's eyes. That was a lifetime ago. Jack's mind raced through what he knew of Michael Lawson's career. The meteoric rise, the spectacular wins, and then the sudden disappearance from professional racing about 5 years ago. There had been rumors of an accident, but nothing concrete in the automotive magazines Jack occasionally flipped through. "I thought you'd retired," Jack said, trying to reconcile the racing legend with the quiet man standing in his garage. "Forced retirement," Michael corrected, a shadow crossing his face. "Shattered my right leg and hip in a crash at Laguna Seca. Doctors said I'd never race professionally again." His hand unconsciously moved to his right side. They were right. Jack didn't know what to say. For a professional driver, losing the ability to race was like a musician going deaf or a painter losing their sight. "I'm sorry." Michael shrugged, the gesture a little too casual to be genuine. "Life happens. I've been working as a driving consultant and coach for the past few years. It's not the same, but..." He trailed off, his eyes drifting back to the Shelby. "But this exhibition race is different." Jack finished for him. "It's not about competing," Michael explained. "It's about connection. My father never got to see me race professionally. He was too ill to travel by the time I made it to the big leagues. This is..." He paused, searching for words. "This is about coming full circle, I suppose." Jack understood completely. The things we do to honor those we've lost sometimes defy logical explanation. They're about feelings, not practicality. "Then we'd better make sure she's perfect," Jack said with newfound determination. Michael's smile turned genuine. "Thank you." He glanced at his watch. "I should let you get to work. Is there anything else you need from me today?" Jack shook his head. "I'll call you once I've ordered the parts and have a more detailed timeline." As Michael turned to leave, Jack found himself making a decision that surprised even him. "Mr. Lawson." "Michael, wait." Michael paused at the garage entrance, eyebrows raised in question. "I do this thing," Jack began awkwardly. "Once a month, I choose one car to fix for free. No charge for parts or labor." He gestured to the small stack of applications on his workbench. "Usually it's for people who can't afford repairs otherwise, but, Michael prompted when Jack hesitated. "But I think your Shelby just became this month's project." Michael's expression shifted from surprise to confusion. "That's incredibly generous, but I can afford the repairs." "That money should go to someone who needs it." Jack shook his head. "It's not about the money. It's about the car, what it represents." He glanced at the photographs of his father still visible through the office doorway. "My dad would have given his right arm to work on a Shelby GT 500. And this isn't just any Shelby. It's a connection between you and your father, just like this shop is between me and mine." Michael stood silently, studying Jack with an intensity that might have been uncomfortable, if not for the genuine emotion behind it. "Let me do this," Jack continued. "Consider it my contribution to your father's car, making it to that exhibition." For a long moment, Michael said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a roughness that hadn't been there before. "My father would have liked you, Jack Reynolds, and mine would have loved this car," Jack replied with a smile. "So we're even." Michael nodded, seemingly unable to find more words. He extended his hand and Jack took it, sealing their unusual agreement with a handshake that felt more significant than either man could articulate. After Michael left, Jack stood in the quiet garage looking at the magnificent machine before him. The Shelby represented everything he loved about cars. The perfect marriage of engineering and art, of power and beauty. Working on it would be a privilege, not a job. He picked up his phone and began making calls to parts suppliers, feeling a renewed sense of purpose that had been missing since his father's death. This project wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about honoring legacies, his father's, Michael's father's, and in some small way, his own. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of focused work. Jack opened the shop for regular customers during normal business hours, but his mornings and evenings belonged to the Shelby. He worked with a meticulousness that bordered on obsession, cleaning and refurbishing each component before the reinstallation. Michael visited every few days, bringing coffee and sometimes lunch, watching Jack work with an appreciation that made the long hours worthwhile. Their conversations flowed easily, two men bound by shared passions and similar losses. "Did you ever want to race?" Michael asked one evening as Jack carefully rebuilt the carburetor, his hands steady under the bright workshop light. Jack considered the question, setting down his tools. "Not professionally. I enjoyed the local amateur circuit when I was younger, but I always knew the shop was my future." He glanced up with a small smile. "Besides, not all of us can have your natural talent." Michael laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet garage. "Natural talent is overrated. I worked my ass off for every victory." "Your record suggests otherwise," Jack countered. 3 consecutive championships is unprecedented." "Would have been 4 if not for the crash," Michael said, his tone light despite the weight of the words. Jack studied him, noting how Michael's right hand unconsciously massaged his thigh. "Do you miss it? The professional circuit?" "Every day," Michael admitted without hesitation. "Not just the racing, the whole life. The team, the preparation, the strategy. Racing is the visible part, but it's everything around it that makes it special." He paused, sipping his coffee. "That's partly why I'm looking for a new crew chief for my development team." "Development team?" Jack asked, interest piqued. "I run a racing school and development program for young drivers," Michael explained. "Take promising kids who don't have the financial backing and give them a shot. My crew chief retired last month after a heart scare." Jack nodded, returning to the carburetor. "Sounds rewarding." "It is," Michael agreed. "Almost as rewarding as bringing a classic back to life." The work continued steadily. Jack replaced fuel lines, rebuilt the carburetor, restored the electrical system, and meticulously inspected every component. Parts arrived from specialists around the country, each one carefully tested before installation. By the end of the second week, the Shelby's engine bay gleamed as it had when it left the factory in 1967. Every wire, hose, and component had been either restored or replaced with period-correct parts. Jack had gone beyond the necessary repairs, driven by a combination of professional pride and personal connection to the project. The moment of truth came on a clear Saturday morning. Michael arrived early, a nervous energy radiating from him as Jack made final adjustments to the timing. "Ready?" Jack asked, closing the hood with reverent care. Michael nodded, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "As I'll ever be." Jack handed him the keys, understanding that this moment belonged to Michael alone. "She's your car," You should be the one to wake her up." Michael accepted the keys, his fingers closing around them tightly. He circled the car slowly, running his hand along the midnight blue finish, before opening the driver's door and sliding behind the wheel. The leather seat embraced him like an old friend. Jack watched from a respectful distance as Michael took a deep breath, inserted the key, and turned it to the accessory position. The gauges sprang to life, the soft clicks of the electric fuel pump audible in the hushed garage. Another breath and Michael turned the key further. The starter engaged with a healthy whir. 1 second passed, then 2, and suddenly the 428 cubic inch V8 roared to life, filling the garage with the distinctive muscular rumble that only American V8s of that era possessed. The sound was physical, vibrating through the concrete floor and resonating in Jack's chest. Michael's face transformed, years falling away as the engine settled into a smooth idle. He revved it experimentally, and the Shelby responded instantly, the throaty growl rising to a challenging roar before settling back. Jack couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. This was why he became a mechanic, not just to fix machines, but to restore connections, to breathe life back into history. Michael turned to him through the open window, his eyes bright with emotion. "She sounds perfect." "She is perfect," Jack confirmed, moving closer to listen to the engine's healthy purr. "How does it feel?" "Like coming home," Michael said simply. They spent the next hour making minor adjustments, fine-tuning the idle and checking for any issues. The Shelby performed flawlessly, responding to each adjustment with the precision of a much younger machine. As the morning stretched toward noon, Michael finally shut off the engine, the sudden silence almost as powerful as the sound had been. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, climbing out of the car. Jack shook his head. "Seeing her run like that is thanks enough." "No," Michael insisted. "What you've done goes beyond a repair job. You've restored more than just a car." He hesitated, then continued. "The exhibition race is next Saturday. I'd like you to come as my guest." Jack raised his eyebrows in surprise. "To Willow Springs?" "Not just to watch," Michael clarified. "I need someone in the pits who knows this car inside and out. Someone I can trust." The invitation caught Jack off guard. The shop would normally be open on Saturday, but the thought of seeing the Shelby on the track, of being part of that experience, was tempting beyond words. "I'd be honored," he said finally. Michael's smile widened. "Perfect. I'll send the details." He extended his hand. "Thank you, Jack." Truly. As they shook hands, Jack felt a connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. A mutual respect built on shared passions and understood losses. In restoring the Shelby, he'd found something he hadn't realized was missing, a renewed sense of purpose. The week passed quickly, with Jack handling his regular customers while making final preparations for the Shelby's track debut. He created a comprehensive toolkit specific to the car's needs and compiled a list of potential track day issues to watch for. Saturday dawned clear and cool, perfect racing weather. Jack loaded his tools into his truck and made the 2-hour drive to Willow Springs International Raceway, the excitement building with each mile. The historic track nestled in the California high desert had hosted races since 1953. Its challenging layout and elevation changes had tested drivers for generations, earning it the nickname, the fastest road in the West. Jack arrived to find the paddock area already buzzing with activity. Vintage cars from various eras gleamed in the morning sun. Corvettes, Jaguars, Porsches, and other automotive legends prepared for their moment on the track. The air carried the distinctive scent of high-octane fuel, hot metal, and rubber, the perfume of motorsport. He spotted the midnight blue Shelby parked in a prime position, Michael standing beside it in conversation with several admirers. Jack parked his truck and made his way over, tool bag in hand. "Jack," Michael called, breaking away from the group. "You made it." "Wouldn't have missed it," Jack replied, taking in the transformed Shelby. Under the bright desert sun, the car looked even more magnificent than it had in the garage. Michael had added period-correct racing numbers in a simple safety harness, the only concessions to its temporary racing role. "She's drawing quite a crowd," Jack observed, nodding toward the enthusiasts still circling the car. "Not surprising," Michael said. "There are only a handful of 67 GT 500 still in racing condition. Most are in museums or private collections." A loudspeaker announcement called for drivers to attend the pre-event briefing, and Michael glanced at his watch. "That's me. Track time starts in an hour, first practice session. Would you mind going over her once more while I'm gone?" "Consider it done," Jack assured him, As Michael headed for the briefing, Jack opened the Shelby's hood, attracting his own group of appreciative onlookers. He checked connections, fluid levels, and belt tensions with practiced efficiency, explaining his process to the curious spectators. "You do beautiful work," commented an older gentleman with the weathered look of a lifetime racing enthusiast. "Don't see craftsmanship like that much anymore." "Thank you," Jack replied, feeling a surge of pride. "She's a special car, and Lawson's a special driver," the man added. Shame about his accident. The sport lost a legend that day. Jack nodded in agreement, completing his inspection and closing the hood. The Shelby was ready for its return to the track after more than a decade of silence. When Michael returned from the briefing, he was accompanied by a young woman with a professional camera and a press pass. "Jack, this is Emily Chen from Classic Motorsport magazine," he introduced. "She's doing a feature on vintage racing." "Emily, this is Jack Reynolds, the mechanical genius who brought the Shelby back to life." Emily shook Jack's hand with a firm grip. "Michael's been singing your praises. Mind if I ask you a few questions for the article?" The next 30 minutes passed in a blur as Jack found himself explaining the restoration process for the magazine. He spoke with passion about the challenges and rewards of working on the historic vehicle, careful to give credit to Michael's father for the car's remarkable preservation. As the time for the practice session approached, Emily thanked them both and moved on to interview other participants. Michael changed into a simple racing suit, not the flashy sponsored gear of his professional days, but a classic style that matched the vintage nature of the event. "Nervous?" Jack asked as Michael prepared to take the Shelby onto the track. "Terrified," Michael admitted with a surprising candor. "It's been 5 years since I drove competitively, and even longer since I drove a car with no electronic aids or modern safety features." You'll be fine," Jack assured him. "The car's solid and you haven't forgotten how to drive." Michael laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Let's hope not." He glanced around at the other drivers preparing their machines. "This isn't about winning anyway. It's about honoring your father," Jack finished when Michael trailed off. "Exactly." Michael's expression softened. "When I'm behind the wheel of his car, I feel connected to him in a way I haven't since he died." Jack understood that feeling perfectly. "He'd be proud to see you taking her around the track." "I hope so." Michael extended his hand. "Wish me luck?" "You don't need luck," Jack said as they shook hands. "You've got skill and a perfectly tuned machine." The practice session proceeded without incident. Jack watched from the pit wall as Michael gradually built speed, reacquainting himself with the Shelby's handling characteristics and the track's challenging layout. By the end of the session, the midnight blue car was flowing through the corners with increasing confidence, its distinctive exhaust note echoing across the desert landscape. When Michael returned to the pits, his face was flushed with exhilaration, his eyes bright with a joy Jack hadn't seen before. "She's magnificent," he declared, climbing out of the car. "Handles better than when she was new." Jack moved in immediately, checking temperatures and looking for any signs of stress. The Shelby had performed flawlessly, the engine temperatures remaining stable despite the workout. "How does your leg feel?" he asked quietly, noting the slight stiffness in Michael's movements. "It complains," Michael admitted, "but nothing I can't manage." He patted the Shelby's roof affectionately, worth every twinge. The exhibition race itself was scheduled for the afternoon. Unlike modern competitions with their emphasis on cutthroat overtaking and strategic pit stops, this event was designed to showcase the vintage machines at speed while respecting their historical value. More parade than race, but with enough competitive spirit to honor the car's sporting heritage. As the start time approached, the atmosphere in the paddock shifted from casual appreciation to focused preparation. These might be gentleman drivers in historic cars, but the competitive instinct remained. Michael seemed to grow calmer as the moment drew nearer, settling into the focused state that had made him a champion. He checked his safety harness, adjusted his driving gloves, and performed a final walk-around of the Shelby with Jack. "Whatever happens out there," he said as they completed the inspection, "thank you for making this possible." Jack nodded, surprised by the emotion tightening his throat. "Just bring her back in one piece." "That's the plan," Michael replied with a grin. The cars were called to the grid, creating a rolling museum of automotive history as they took their positions. The Shelby, with its racing number 67 matching its model year, looked perfectly at home among its peers. From his position in the pit lane, Jack watched the start with a mixture of pride and anxiety. The green flag dropped, and 20 vintage machines accelerated toward the first turn, their engines creating a symphony of mechanical music that no modern race could match. Michael held the Shelby in the middle of the pack, driving with a restraint that spoke of respect for both the car and the occasion. This wasn't about winning, it was about celebration. As the laps accumulated, Jack found himself drawn into the rhythm of the race, anticipating the Shelby's appearance at each turn, analyzing its performance through sound and sight. The car remained flawless, a testament to both its original engineering and the care taken in its restoration. Halfway through the scheduled distance, Michael began to pick up the pace, the Shelby moving with increasing authority through the field. Jack recognized the change immediately. The cautious reacquaintance phase was over, and the racer's instinct had taken over. By the final lap, the midnight blue Shelby had moved to third position, its V8 roaring defiantly as it pursued the leaders. Jack found himself holding his breath as Michael executed a perfect overtaking maneuver into the challenging turn 9, claiming second place with the precision that had made him a champion. The checkered flag fell with the Shelby crossing the line in second position, its performance all the more remarkable given its recent resurrection from 12 years of dormancy. When Michael returned to the pits, the joy on his face transcended the result. This wasn't about the position, it was about connection to the car, to his father, to the sport that had defined his life. "She ran perfectly," he declared, embracing Jack in an unexpected hug. "Not a single hiccup. You didn't drive too badly yourself," Jack replied with a laugh. The post-race celebration carried a nostalgic warmth as drivers and spectators gathered to share stories and admire the machines. The Shelby received particular attention, its combination of authenticity and performance drawing appreciative crowds. As the afternoon light began to soften, Michael found Jack checking the Shelby one last time before his journey home. "I have a proposition for you," Michael said without preamble. Jack straightened, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "I'm listening. I mentioned I'm looking for a new crew chief for my development team," Michael began. "After today, I'm more convinced than ever that you're the right person for the job." Jack blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm a small-town mechanic, not a racing engineer." "That's exactly why I want you," Michael countered. "You understand the soul of a car, not just its specifications. You see beyond the mechanics to the purpose." He gestured to the Shelby. "Anyone with training can follow a manual. What you did here, that comes from something deeper." The offer hung in the air between them, unexpected and life-changing. Jack's mind raced through the implications. Leaving the family shop, entering the world of competitive motorsport, starting a new chapter when he'd assumed his story was already written. "I can't just abandon Reynolds Auto," he said finally. "It's been in my family for 58 years, Michael finished for him. "I know. I'm not asking you to abandon it. I'm asking you to expand it." He leaned against the Shelby, his expression earnest. "The team is based 2 hours from Millbrook. You could split your time, bring on a manager for the day-to-day at the shop." Jack hesitated, the possibility taking root despite his reservations. "Why me? There must be dozens of experienced crew chiefs looking for positions. Because you fixed a vintage car for free, not knowing the owner was a famous racer seeking a new crew chief," Michael said with a smile, echoing the circumstances that had brought them together. "Because you did it out of respect for what the car represented, not for recognition or reward." The simple truth of it silenced Jack's objections. He looked at the Shelby, then back at Michael, seeing not just an offer of employment, but an invitation to honor his father's legacy in a new way. "I'll need time to think about it," he said finally. "Of course," Michael agreed. "Take all the time you need." He reached into his pocket and handed Jack a business card. Different from the first one he'd given, this one embossed with the logo of Lawson Racing Development. "When you're ready to talk details, call me." As the sun set over Willow Springs, casting long shadows across the paddock, Jack helped prepare the Shelby for its journey home. The day had brought more than a successful return to the track for a historic machine. It had opened a door to possibilities Jack hadn't imagined. The drive back to Millbrook gave him time to reflect. The shop had been his anchor after his father's death, the familiar routine providing stability when grief threatened to overwhelm him. But perhaps it was time for it to evolve, just as his father had adapted the business through decades of change. The next morning, Jack stood in the quiet garage, coffee in hand, studying the photographs of his father that lined the office wall. In one, his father stood beside a young Jack at his first soapbox derby, pride radiating from his weathered face. In another, they posed together after Jack's first solo engine rebuild, the shared accomplishment evident in their matching grins. "What would you do, Dad?" Jack murmured to the empty shop. The answer came not in words but in memory. His father's voice from years ago, offering advice when Jack had hesitated to enter a local racing event. The only failure is in not trying, son. Everything else is just learning. With sudden clarity, Jack reached for his phone and dialed the number on Michael's card. Michael Lawson, came the answer after 2 rings. It's Jack, he said, certainty replacing doubt. About that crew chief position, I'd like to discuss details. Michael's smile was audible in his voice. I was hoping you'd call. When can you start? I'll need a month to reorganize the shop. Jack replied, his mind already mapping out the transition. But I'm in. Perfect, Michael said. And Jack, thank you for taking a chance on this. I think we're going to make a hell of a team. As he ended the call, Jack felt a weight lifting. Not the burden of responsibility, but the constraint of limited horizons. The shop would continue, his father's legacy preserved but not frozen in time. And Jack would honor that legacy by embracing the opportunity to grow, to challenge himself, to connect his skills to a larger purpose. Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow through the garage windows. Jack moved to the workbench and picked up the stack of applications for his monthly free repair program. He would complete this commitment before beginning his new journey. The mechanic who fixed vintage cars for free had found his own unexpected second chance through a midnight blue Shelby and the connection it created between 2 sons carrying their father's dreams forward. In the quiet morning light, surrounded by the tools of his trade and the memories of those who had taught him their use, Jack Reynolds felt something he hadn't experienced in the 8 months since his father's passing. The simple, profound joy of looking forward to tomorrow.